good to go.
Lovely. Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to my chat. Thanks for coming along. I'm going to be talking about building truly secure applications in 2025. So I'm going to be going through kind of the landscape of this year, what we can do as developers and people building technology, and kind of the ways, the tooling that's available to us and the tricks that might get us to slip up in what we're doing. So I want to start with this stat, which I think is like a key kind of illustration of what it is that is an issue within the kind of technology industry. So Immersive Labs and Osterman Research drew this conclusion from a survey of 260 development and security teams in large organizations, and it found that 81% of developers have knowingly released vulnerable applications. But before I get a little bit more into that and why and those kind of reasons, it's a little bit of an introduction to me. I am a software engineer in a cybersecurity company. So I've been a backend developer for nearly 5 years now. I joined cybsafe in 2018 in sales and then moved to customer success before becoming a software engineer. And it was in 2020 that I found Coding Black Females, which is an absolutely incredible organization, as I'm sure many of you here today are aware of. It was through their courses, workshops that I was able to use that learning and become a software engineer. And then in 2021, having met an incredible amount of Black women in technology, I was inspired to create a podcast that platforms those voices, because a lot of what we see in tech, it doesn't necessarily reflect the people building it. And that was kind of one of the things we wanted to address. And then in the past year and a bit, I've been doing a computer science master's. So coming from that non-traditional background, I'm now trying to get that solid foundation in the fundamentals. And a lot of that has informed how I build. So if you've got any questions about any of those things, please do reach out and let's chat. So I want to start with a really important concept that is a key part of what our software that we build at work does, and that security only works if it works for everyone. We've got a diverse range of people using technology now, and people building, and that access, the barrier to access is lower than it's ever been. So in order for security to work well, it needs to be able to work for a massive group of people and different types of people. And when we come back to this statistic of the 81% knowingly releasing vulnerable applications, I think what it says to me is that we've got a fundamental barrier between what it is we're teaching developers and how it is we're spreading the knowledge from a security perspective, because I don't believe that it's 81% of developers knowingly and wanted to release vulnerable applications. I think it's something, there are some barriers, and I think that's something that's really important to explore. I love cats and I love cat memes. So I thought this was a really good representation of how I felt when I first got into coding and when I first became a software engineer, which is just that people make the assumption that when you're building code and if you're an engineer, you are building things that are well optimized and secure. And so when I saw that statistic for the first time of the 81%, it made me realize how little I personally knew about maintaining secure code. And as a career switcher who came through boot camps, and despite working in information security, I knew very, very little about building securely. And so that kind of sent me on a big rabbit hole of hyper-focus into this topic. So what are some of these barriers that I believe are causing that kind of statistic? One of the things is that I think we've used security as a black box. And what I mean by that is it's a term where you've got the inputs and outputs, but we don't have any real knowledge of the thing in the middle, like what's happening within those inputs to create those outputs. I think there's a lot of gatekeeping through difficult concepts and jargon. It's very similar to a lot of technical topics where people can feel kind of almost superior in a way if they can understand something that you can't. And I think a lot of that has led to overcomplication of certain concepts and things that make it hard to understand. And then also just that it is a very vast landscape. We'll speak in a little minute about some examples of things that have happened in the last year, but it can be quite overwhelming for people to engage with something that is so broad. And then also within an organization itself, kind of on a local level, it can be quite hard to see who's responsible for what. And it can be really easy, like with bystander effect, to kind of defer that responsibility to the people around us rather than taking it on ourselves. So I think it's really helpful if we go into defining exactly what cybersecurity is, because it is quite a broad term and the definition can vary a lot. But I see it as the ongoing effort to protect individuals, organizations, and governments from digital attacks by protecting network systems and data from unauthorized use or harm. And I'll speak about OWASP quite a little bit, and I'll introduce them properly later. But the global board, one of these quotes I think is really powerful. It's just that the problem of insecure software is perhaps one of the most important challenges of our time. And fundamentally, I think what I would love everybody to take away from this, and what I would like people to think about moving forward when they are building things, is that we, as the builders of technology, have a responsibility to empower and protect people that are using the things we build. So rather than that kind of deference, and it's about this is the security team's job, or it's on the user to protect their data, like as the people that are building these services, we need to protect them. So a few of the things that have happened this year in the UK security news, many of us will have heard about the ransomware and supply chain attack that took down M&S in April, and that resulted in a suspension of all online orders, gift cards, automated stock systems, when we have an estimated cost of £300 million in lost profit. And so the entry point for that attack was a compromise of a third-party supplier via social engineering. Another one that was really big this summer, or this year, was the Co-op one, where the team detected the intrusion. So they were able to actually minimize a lot of the disruption compared to M&S, but they still were able to access and exfiltrate 6.5 million customer and employee records. So all of that data that people were trusting the Co-op to handle securely was taken out from their systems. And then the biggest one of all this year for us is definitely the Jaguar Land Rover in August. So that's caused widespread factory and office system shutdowns. It's estimated to be one of the most costly UK cyber attacks of all time. And we still don't know how much it's going to cost in truth, but we're estimating 1.9 billion to the UK economy. And we're still potentially not going to see recovery from them for months. So I think what's a really important thing, despite all of those things happening, I think rather than be overwhelmed and kind of put back by that, I think what we need to see is that we need to adopt a new mindset in this age of AI. So some of the things I think that are really key for us as people building technology is understanding that security doesn't just mean fixing vulnerabilities. It's something a lot deeper than that, because if you build securely from the beginning, you're not having to have these later fixes down the line in delivery. Also consider that we're building faster than ever. I know that I am certainly using coding tools and LLMs like Claude Code to assist me in the things I'm doing every day, and my output feels like it's faster than it's ever been. But to that point, there's also the kind of movement into iterating without necessarily having those proper thought processes in place, which can make us a little bit more susceptible to building something insecure. And then also this reactive versus proactive mindset shift. So we want to design security in, something that we'll talk about in a minute, rather than debug the flaws out. And an exciting thing, I think, for early career developers is that you guys are perfectly positioned to lead this change and be the forefront of this, because as people that are learning from scratch, you've got a lot of space to build good habits. You've got less bad habits to undo, and you're most likely building things from scratch as well. So rather than maintaining old legacy systems, you've got the power to lay down the right foundations with the things that you're starting to build. So back to this point of our responsibilities as the builders. If we are being a user-focused person within tech, that means that we are building with the end user's protection in mind. And so we come back to that concept of security being that ongoing effort to protect people and their data from use or harm. So I think one of the most powerful things we can do as developers is to really be advocating for users of our software. We're the final frontier in terms of deciding what does and doesn't need to be stored. So depending on the kind of product you're building, whether it's a financial product or a medical product, you have access to things which are extremely important and extremely valuable to the people that are using your services. And you need to be doing the utmost, even in the like thought exercises and planning, to make sure that you are doing things with their best interests in mind. Another research paper I want to talk about is the sneak state of open source security. So in 2023, AI code generating tools have been achieved blanket penetration and are now being deployed by 92% of organizations. So that was a couple of years ago. You can imagine it's probably only gone up since then. But essentially, the vast majority of organizations are already using AI code and LLMs to do things. And if you know about how they are gathering their data, you know that it's full of all the mistakes that we've made in the things that we've deployed. But on the flip side to that, there's also quite a lot of research coming out to say that LLMs and generative AI has been really helpful to fix software vulnerabilities. So Auguste has recently started doing the top 10 for LLMs. And I really recommend it as a resource to try and figure out how exactly you can be using these tools to the best of your ability and with security in mind. And so as the people who are building this technology and doing this kind of in this new frontier and in this era, what is it that we can do to make sure that we're doing the best we can for these people? And so I want to introduce the concept of shifting left. To understand shifting left and shifting right, we're thinking about the software development lifecycle as this like continuous loop where you start with planning and then code, build, test, release, deploy, operate, monitor. And the idea is that you are moving the thought of security and the concepts of security to this left side where you're in the planning and you're in the coding before things get anywhere near release and near production. Because if you released software into production and you're not considering security until the right side, that's where you have the concern and the issues with vulnerabilities. So yeah, shifting left is just the practice of moving testing, quality and performance evaluation earlier and earlier into that development process. And best practice, totally best practice, is doing it before any code is even written. So you as the creator of the product you're trying to ship need to fully understand the goals, motivations, successes, and metrics for the roles of the people we're trying to help secure. However, shifting left has been a term that has been around for far longer than I've been a developer, and we're still experiencing these problems despite preaching this. So we're seeing it also as a bit of a kind of strategy of diminishing returns, and I want to explore some reasons why that might be the case. We come to another statistic from another research paper, which says that only 27% of developers saw security as a critical part of our role. And again, this comes back to this idea that I think we are being isolated out of the concept of security being part of what we do. And because we don't see ourselves as part of that solution, we're not even engaging with it in a way that means we're empowered to make the best decisions. And I want to talk about the Peltzman effect. So in the late 1960s, there was new automobile safety measures that were introduced, and that includes the seatbelt mandate. So as car safety technologies have been introduced, Peltzman, the researcher, wanted to study whether these measures would lead to decreases in automobile death rates. However, ultimately, he found that there was no decrease in car deaths and theorized that it was because drivers felt safer because of the safety measures and therefore were more likely to make riskier decisions which consequently increase the likelihood of a car crash occurring. So we come to this kind of contradictory idea that when we introduce more safety measures, we as people tend to increase our risky behaviors. And so according to this effect, people's perception of risk decreases as you increase safety measures. So they may feel that they can now afford, when they're doing this evaluation in their head, they can now afford to make a riskier decision. And as a result, the phenomenon predicts that mandatory safety measures can actually experience a lower benefit than we would expect because the measures are sometimes somewhat offset by increases in risky behavior. But what does that mean in terms of security? So one of the things I think, and I think this is a really great study, I would also recommend it, is by RNS in January 2024, towards a better understanding of users' security behavior. So in this study, they found that more tools are positively related with the computer being infected and the risk of malware of the computer and malware infections. Security activities are negatively related with a computer being infected and the risk level of the computer and the number of malware infections. So the more you do these activities of teaching people, the less of an impact it can have. And then also more tools with security tools engage in more risky online activities. So it's that whole thing of like, because you believe the antivirus is going to solve everything for you, you will then click on dodgy links because you believe that you're safe from them. So I think the conclusion overall from this study was about that tools not being enough. And I think that this is another like key problem that we have in cybersecurity and in the security world and secure coding practices is we can kind of become very dependent on our tools in a way that impacts our decision making and our effort into making sure we're building securely. So I think this takes me into the kind of theory of system 1 and system 2 thinking. So with system 1 is our brain's fast, automatic, unconscious, emotional response to situations and stimuli. And so this is in the form of like absent-mindedly reading text on a billboard, knowing how to tie your laces without a second thought. And it's basically near instant. It's very automatic. It's done with very little effort. And this is a really, really easy system of thinking to exploit. And then versus system 2, which is slow, effortful, logical, and it's where our brains are engaged in solving more complicated problems. So you're using system 2 thinking when you're trying to park, or I am anyway, when I'm trying to parallel park in a tight space, you're having to engage like a lot of your brain in order to make a decision. And so I think that something we need to think about when we're building technology, when we're planning to build technology, when we're designing technology, is really try and encourage our system 2 thinking. Don't rely on the tools and allow that to cloud your judgment and think I can just make an automatic call and decision, but really, really become informed of the risks, be aware of the implications, and feel a part of the solution. So I would like to move on to a few tool recommendations, because a lot of the time people, when they are engaging with security for the first time or trying to get into better habits of building secure code and building secure applications, is it can be quite overwhelming to know where to start. So I'm a massive OWASP fan. And another quote that I think is a fantastic kind of show about what OWASP is all about is that open and collaborative knowledge is the OWASP way. There's no single strategy that will guarantee success, but you can get a hell of a lot closer to the chances of it if you are using best practices that's shared by the experts in a collaborative and open way. So I have mentioned them a few times. I'll do a little bit of an introduction to what they do. They are a collective of engineers who produce a ton of free documentation. And my favorite part is the learning resources that are free to all as well. And if you are new to coding and your early career, or you want to learn more about the most important vulnerabilities, I really recommend looking into the OWASP Top 10, which is a standard awareness document for developers and for web application security, which has a broad consensus, like globally gathered, about the most critical security risks to web applications. this changes every few years, and it's really interesting to watch how things change as like different tooling changes and different groups start exploiting in different ways. But it's globally recognized by developers as the first step towards more secure coding. And it's just because it is so heavily contributed to by such a wide range of people. And then we come back to this concept of like security not being a black art or a closed secret that only a few can practice. So there's a whole load of stuff where they are trying to build things which mean that you can, upskill and be involved in security from the moment you start building software. And it's a great priority of risk to focus on. I can't tell you how many job descriptions and interviews will ask you about how you will evaluate the threats and risks, and having that top 10 as like a checklist of things you can think about, even in your ideation process of like, have I considered how X feature is going to be vulnerable to Y risk, is a great way to kind of go through that thought process when you're trying to explain that answer. And one of my favorite tools is this threat dragon. I think it's super cute, but it's also just a great way for you to communicate risks within a team and to external stakeholders, both as a technical person and a non-technical person. So the idea is that you would start to build these diagrams right at the start before you start building a feature, and kind of understand the flow of data and where those risks are. It's a great way to be able to put something together really quickly and get a room of technical and non-technical stakeholders on the same page. Another one I think is great is the Auguste cornucopia. So it's a card game based way to design user security stories. You can identify application security requirements and develop those user stories. So again, for like that shifting left concept and really getting to understand what it is you're doing from the beginning of the development cycle. And then this one, Zap, I think is really cool. Definitely worth trying for your like side projects and the things that you're building on your own. It basically lets you build a crawler which you can put inside your application, and it will passively scan each page that your project has, and then it will use the active scanner to attack all of those discovered pages, functionalities, and parameters. So a really important note with this one is don't use it on any production applications, because it will look like you're trying to attack your place of work, which isn't great. But it's a really fun one to like have a play about with your own side project, something that like is low stakes and you're okay with messing about with. And then I think another really good thing that is a really low effort way to kind of engage with best security practices is like, security doesn't just mean encryption and safe storage of data. It can also just mean like, how are you explaining an error message to your user when they are unable to log in, and what are the different methods for people? Like, this is all a part of your threat surface and ways that people can kind of take advantage of what it is you're building. So yeah, I like this as an example because it feels like really low effort and a really easy way to show that you're engaging with cybersecurity and building securely. So in a nutshell, like, security and secure coding, I think, makes you so much better of a developer because you'll be able to catch vulnerabilities earlier. You'll build secure code by default, and you will just be a lot better at being able to advocate for and understand your user. There's so much I haven't gone into about, the different frameworks of like giving users storing data by least privilege and things like that, and access by least privilege. There's so many different topics to go into, but in a nutshell, I think if you go with the idea that the most important thing is the user you're trying to protect, it will make you a fantastic developer. So that's everything I have for you today. Not sure if anybody has any questions.
Thank you so much. Yes, there is one question in the Q&A here from Zoe Duncan, if you can.
Oh, yes.
See that.
The development team has limited resources. Which security measures would you prioritize first? how can organizations encourage a proactive security culture around developers who are often under, oh my God, that's such a good question. And it's like, I don't know if there's any one single answer, but I think the most important thing for encouraging a proactive security culture is psychological safety. And I just spent my day yesterday at the Incident IO conference, which I'd recommend watching back the talks, because it's basically all of these big SaaS companies talking about the biggest mess ups they've ever had and like taking down production and all that stuff. But so much of the message was like, it makes their team so much better when they're able to admit their mistakes, and they're able to share it collectively and learn from it, because you're not building from a place of fear. You're building from a place of it's okay if I get this wrong, and I'm able to, the system shouldn't have allowed you to fail, rather than you as the person, Zoe, are the responsible person for the mistake. It's like, it's a collective failure, which means it's a collective learning experience. And all of that means that you're so much more likely to engage with security from a place of interest and excitement rather than fear. And I think that's one of the main things we don't have at the moment in security, is like, it is so scary. Yeah, that's a great question. I don't think there's like one good way to fix it though.
Okay, I don't know if there are any more questions. I have checked. No. Well, thank you so much. That was a really incredible insight into cybersecurity and ways to keep safe, and OWASP, building securely. That's been going for a very long time, so I remember it a decade ago.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you for that. And please stick around for the next session and direct any kind of questions. I don't know, you might be sticking around. Jessie, you've been in and out of lounges and things, but feel free to maybe message Jessie and ask any other questions that you might have as a follow-up. Yeah, sure. Do you remember I was? Yeah, so we're showing our age here, but anyway. But yeah, amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. See you soon. And see you tomorrow if the people are coming in person.
Yes, everyone who's coming tomorrow. See you soon. But we have 3 more. Don't go yet. We have 3 more sessions until the end of the day. So,
yeah, please DM me with any questions and connect. And yeah, let's chat. Thanks a lot, FOL.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Jessie. Okay, everyone. Bye.
Bye.